Which which one of the following are involved in wagering agreement? An uncertain event, party having no control over the event, except the stick parties have no other interest in the event. Which one of the following mark an agreement is void? Mistake of fact by both of the party. When a consent to the contract is caused by coercion, the contract is voidable. An acceptance given by Y on X invitation for a launch over the phone is not a contract because of which one of the following? There is no intention to create a legal obligation. In order to convert proposal into promise, the acceptance of the proposal must be absolute and unqualified. Which one of the following is correct? An agreement or contract if they are made with the free consent of parties competent to contract for lawful consideration and lawful object are not expressly declared by law to be void. An agreement to do an act impossible in itself is a void. A, for natural love and affection, promises to give his son B rupees 1000. A put a promise to B in writing and registered it. This is a contract. An agreement to pay rupees 1000 if B will marry a daughter C. C was dead at the time of agreement. The agreement is invalid. Minor contract is void. An agreement entered into with free consent and lawful, but with inadequate consideration is lawful. Where both parties to the agreement are under mistake as to the matter of fact essential to an agreement, the agreement is void. Nudum pactum means without consideration. A having advanced money to his son B during his minority, upon B coming of age obtained by mistake of parent influence, the bond of B for greater influence, a bond from B for greater amount than sum due to respect of advance, an employee undue influence. In Nash versus Inman, case issue was minor's liability. In which one of the following statement undue influence does not exist? When a party threatened another to commit a suicide, A entered into contract with B. In this guilt, B is guilty of fraud. A can now rescind the contract and get compensation. Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. Who was the defendant in the trial court? Brahmodatt. The age of majority for the purpose of contract is 18 years. The contract made by minor is void ab initio, was laid down in Mohiri Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. Illegality rendered a contract void. Mere silence is not fraud unless there is a duty to speak. Contingent contract section 31, wagering contract section 30, restraint from trade or business section 27, agreement without consideration section 25. When the consent to the contract is caused by coercion, the contract is voidable. Inadequacy of the consideration is relevant in determining the question of free consent. A promises B a job in the government service and B promises to pay 10,000 for it. The agreement is void. Out of which one of the following agreement one is not void? An agreement with handicapped person. An agreement to sell his scooter rupees 10,000 to B for 5,000 only as the consent was obtained by coercion. Here the agreement is voidable. A intending to deceive B falsely represent that 500 tons of indigo were made annually at B's factory and thereby induces B to buy the factory. The contract is void at the option of B. Illegality render a contract void. Which one of the following agreement is void? Agreement without consideration, agreement in restraint of legal proceeding. Inadequacy of consideration will be taken into account by the contract of law when fraud, coercion, undue influence in the formation of the contract is pleaded. A contract with or by a minor is a contract void in the formation of contract which is not among the three essential damages, in which case fraud is committed by silence. A did not disclose B at the time of selling his car that he had stolen the car. Which contract is void ab initio? A contract to let her daughter on hire for concubinage. Whether all the agreement made without consideration are void? No. A promisor agreed to sell his loved cow only because of financial difficulty. Whether it is a free consent under the Contract Act? Yes. When the agreement is caused by coercion, fraud, misrepresentation, the agreement is voidable. A agreed to sell his car to B at the price when B may be able to pay. This agreement is valid. The case related to minor agreement is void ab initio is Mohidi Bibi versus Dharmodas Ghosh. A promises to obtain for B an employment in the public service and B promises to pay 10,000 to A. The agreement between A and B is a void agreement, and fraud has been discovered by the party in a contract and lost a criminal case. Afterward, that the party agreed to withdraw the case, only compensate the disadvantageous party. Such contract is void as against the public policy. An agreement to sell a horse worth rupees 10,000 for rupees 10. A consent to an agreement was freely given. The agreement is contract. Which one of the following ingredients is not necessary for the contract? Immovable property. An illegal contract are void, but all void contract are not illegal. A intending to deceive B falsely represent that 500 tons of indigo were made annually at the factory and thereby induces B to buy the factory. The contract is voidable at the option of B. A promises to maintain B child B promises to pay rupees 10,000 yearly for the purpose. The consideration is lawful. A agreed to sell B 100 ton of oil. There is nothing whatever show that what kind of oil intended. The agreement is void. A promises to paint the picture for B within rupees 10 at a price of 10,000. A dies before the day. The contract is non-enforceable. A, without the request of anybody, extinguishes the fire in B godown. A suffered injury thereby. B promises to compensate A the whole amount he has spent for the treatment. The contract is enforceable. Which one of the following is a contract? An undertaking in writing, written duly and signed to pay time-barred debt. Which one of the following does not amount to fraud? A representation made without knowing to be false, honestly and believing him to be true. Marriage brokerage contract is valid. A contract consideration and object which is unlawful if it is forbidden by law. A contract between two parties, both laboring under the mistake of law, voidable. A agreed to let her daughter to hear B for concubinage. The agreement is void cause it is immoral. Lending money to the borrower at high rate of interest, which when a money market is tight, render the agreement of loan valid. Threat to strike is no coercion. A contract may be vitiated by fraud, mistake, frustration, undue influence. Which one of the following pairs is correctly matched? In India, consideration must be follow promise or any other person. An agreement not to pursue legal remedy but to render the dispute to the arbitrator under section 28 of Indian Contract Act is valid. Which one of the following agreement is not void? A find B purse and give it to him. B promises to give to A rupees 50. Where both of the party to an agreement are under the mistake as to the matter of the fact of agreement is void. Which one of the following statement is true under the Indian Contract Act 1872? An agreement the meaning of which is not certain is void. Following are essential of valid contract as per Indian Contract Act 1872. Parties to the contract should have capacity to the contract. An agreement with a minor is void, hence minor is allowed to enforce such agreement if it was made for his benefit. Under Indian Contract Act 1872, an agreement not enforceable by law is said to be void when one of the following agreement is not void. Agreement under coercion. The principle of restitution stop where repayment begin can be applied against minors only. Which one of the following agreement is held to be opposite party of the public policy? The arbitration clause for application of foreign policy. If the in time of performance of the contract is the essence of the contract and the promisor failed to perform the contract by the specified time, the contract became voidable at the option of promisee. Under Indian Contract Act, where both parties are under mistake as to the matter of fact, the agreement is void. A applies to the banker for a loan at a time when there is a stringency in the money market. The banker declined to make a loan except at the usual high rate of interest. A accepts the loan of this term. In this case, the contract is valid because this is a transaction of ordinary course of business. A, who deal only with the coconut oil, enter into the agreement with B to sell 50 tons of oil. The agreement is enforceable by law. Which one of the following is not correct under Indian Contract Act? Active concealment of fact by the party to the contract having knowledge or belief of the fact is misrepresentation or fraud. All illegal agreements are void, but all void agreements are not illegal. Only those agreements of which the object or consideration is unlawful as known as illegal agreement. Both are true. BR is a correct assertion of B. Explanation of A. Which one of the following is a valid consideration? May not be adequate. A valid consideration may not be adequate. In the case of non-fulfillment of the contractual obligation, only the parties to the contract can sue each other. This statement may be called privity of contract. A contract with B to pay him a large sum of money when he marries C. B married D instead. He now asks for the money. The contract is void. The contract is void as B has married someone else. A loan given by the son at the instant of his father, who executed all the essential document enforceable against the father because it has sufficient consideration. Consideration was provided by the father. It was done at the desire of promisor. It was done at the request of promisor. A tell B, I offer to sell you my horse for an amount between 10,000 to 12,000. Which one of the following is correct about offer? It is not valid offer because it is uncertain. Choose the most appropriate answer. Complete the statement. When consent to the agreement is caused by fraud, then in accordance with the Indian Contract Act 1872, the agreement of the contract is voidable for inspection. An agreement to keep an offer open certain period of time cannot be cancelled before expiry of that time period if it has a sufficient consideration. Which one of the following agreement is valid? A agreed to sell B all the grains in my godown at Delhi. Parties by their consent agreement can oust the jurisdiction of one court when there are two courts having simultaneously jurisdiction of law. Uncle telegrams to his nephew, if I hear no more about the black horse, I will be considered the horse is mine at 3 at 30,000, 3 lakh, 3 lakh. The nephew to the manager, do not put the black horse on auction, and it has been sold to my uncle. The manager diligently obeyed the order. The uncle never come forward to pay the amount and take back the black horse. The nephew is cannot recover the amount through the court of law, and there was no contract. Lending money to a borrower at the high rate of interest when the money market is tight render the agreement of loan is valid. If minor is supplied with necessary, minor's estate and property is liable. Money paid under the mistake or coercion for recovery if there is mistake of fact and mistake of law. Contract can be entered between juristic person and natural person. Coercion under Indian law is a law known as duress. An agreement, the meaning of which is not certain or capable of being made is certain, are void. What is correct? Proposal plus acceptance is equal to promise. Promise plus consideration is equal to agreement. Agreement plus enforceability is equal to contract. All of the above. An apparently valid agreement may be vitiated if the consent is obtained ignorance regarding representation as to the nature of transaction. An agreement made to sell a cargo corn which was not in existence at the time of contract is void agreement. A agreement to share the benefit of the public office is void. A void agreement is not necessarily illegal. Which one of the following agreement is void? An agreement without consideration, an agreement in restraint of legal proceeding. Consider the following statement regarding the fraud and misrepresentation. Both rendered the contract voidable. Consider the following statement. When the consent to an agreement is caused by undue influence, the agreement of the contract is voidable at the option of parties whose consent was so caused. When both of the party to an agreement under the mistake as to the matter of the fact essential to the agreement is void. Which one of the statement is correct? Both 1 and 2. An agreement to agree in the future is void, for there is no certainty whether the parties will be able to agree. Inadequacy of contract consideration may be considered as evidence for the presence of undue influence. A contract formed by coercion and undue influence is vitiated and voidable at the option of parties whose consent is so obtained. A contract formed where both of the parties under mistake notion about the existence of the subject matter is void. An agreement in writing based on the natural love and affection between near relatives is enforceable without consideration. An agreement to which consent of promisor is freely given, not void, merely because of consideration is inadequate. Which one of the following agreement is not void? At his own violation, agree to sell uh, his horse worth rupees 10,000 for 10 rupees only. A void agreement affects the performance of collateral transaction. Undue influence, positive assertion not only warranted by the information of the person making it. Fraud, contracts unbearable feeds, misrepresentation, गलत हो गया. Undue influence, fraud, fiduciary relation, fraud, contract umberia feeds, misrepresentation, positive assertion not warranted by the information of the person making it, coercion, unlawfully detaining of the property.